You are currently inhabiting a biological state of strategic paralysis, and it is the primary reason you remain a passive observer during the most critical movements of the hierarchy. You believe that crisis, the catastrophic collapse of prices, the freezing of credit, and the widespread panic of the masses is a signal to retreat, to save, and to hide. This is a terminal civilizational hallucination. In the raw, unyielding arena of the persistence hunt, blood in the streets is not a tragedy. It is a metabolic super sale. It is the moment when the weak-handed scavengers perform a total liquidation of their life force because they can no longer endure the tension of the void. You are currently waiting for safety, while the environment is offering you the chance to annex the substrate at a fraction of its functional value. We are now presecting the biology of vulture capitalism, showing you why your fear is a terminal leak of your potential, and how the apex predator utilizes clinical predation to move from the frequency of the victim of the reset to the frequency of the beneficiary of the collapse. You are currently safe and broke, while the Matrix is preparing to hand the keys to the kingdom to the one who has the coldness to buy. The human nervous system is equipped with an ancestral threat detection circuit optimized for a landscape where blood meant the arrival of a superior predator or the loss of a primary resource. To the ancient brain, the sight of red triggered an immediate flight reflex, a total withdrawal of energy to the core for self-preservation. However, the Matrix has performed a neural hijack on this circuit. It has turned the financial market into a biological panic engine. When the tickers turn red and the news cycle broadcasts economic death, your brain receives a signal of peak environment danger, triggering a surge of cortisol and a submissive urge to liquidate everything to survive. This is the entropy of the scavenger. You are being neurologically piloted to sell your hard assets to the giants at the exact moment those assets are most valuable for your long-term expansion. You are the bleeding organism, providing the liquid fuel for the sovereign's annexation. Consider the biology of the discounted strike. In the persistence hunt, the most efficient way to acquire a high-density resource is to wait for the metabolic collapse of the competition. When a market crashes, what you are actually seeing is the mass capitulation of impatience. The unevolved have over-leveraged their nervous systems. They have bought symbols of wealth on credit they cannot defend. When the reset arrives, they are forced into a fire sale of reality. The sovereign man understands that price is a function of panic, while value is a function of physics. He does not care that the social mirror says the asset is worthless. He cares that the asset still possesses the functional utility to generate force. He waits for the maximum blood, the coordinate where the swarm has lost all hope, and he makes a single clinical strike. He is the vulture of the Matrix, cleaning up the wreckage of the weak and converting it into the foundation of the dynasty. The architecture of clinical predation requires you to move from emotional reactivity to metabolic stillness. Most of you are still thinking in terms of how much have I lost? This is a slave protocol. The sovereign thinks in terms of how much can I annex? He understands that money is merely a voucher for matter. In a crisis, the matter doesn't disappear. It merely changes ownership. It moves from the high volatility scavenger to the low time preference sentinel. He practices informational sovereignty. He has decoupled his survival signal from the market noise. He understands that the blood you see on the streets is the stored energy of the unevolved, now available for the taking. He reaches a point of hormonal independence where the red candle is not a threat, but an entry signal. He is the stable variable who remains heavy while the world becomes light and fluid. For those ready to move from the metabolic waste of the panic cycle to the high voltage sovereignty of the vulture, the protocol 260 provides the clinical architecture for constructing automated digital empires. This is the tactical fulcrum. You utilize the fluidity of the AI machine to generate the flow during the good times, ensuring you have the dry powder, the liquid capital required to strike when the blood begins to flow. You do not use your yield to follow the swarm into the bubble. You use your yield to garrison your reserves for the collapse. You understand that wealth is not earned in the bull market. It is annexed in the bear market. By the time the unevolved realize that they have been hollowed out by their own fear, the sovereign has already sequestered their life force into his own stronghold of force. He has moved from the frequency of the prey to the frequency of the executioner. The environment of 2026 is a great sifting where the emotionally transparent are the first to be recycled. As the Matrix triggers high-frequency financial resets and synthetic crises, any organism that reacts to the pain is currently being liquidated. To survive, you must move into the Z-axis of coldness. You must build internal law into your acquisition strategy so it is no longer subject to the chaos. This is the sequestration of detail. By owning the hard assets that the swarm is too afraid to hold, you have created a sovereign vacuum. You are the anchor of the future. You must decide what you are. Are you the dust that is blown away by the storm of the crisis, or the vulture that thrives in the aftermath? The primal code is not about kindness, it is about functional empires. Find the coordinate where the blood is thickest and put all your metabolic weight on it. Stand up, audit your fear leaks, and begin the final annexation of your sovereign kingdom. The abyss is waiting for the attached, but the substrate is waiting for the vulture. We must now bisect the specific mechanics of the capitulation strike and the clinical pathology of the liquidity crisis. You believe that buying the dip is a simple matter of timing a chart. This is a terminal civilizational hallucination. In the raw, unyielding arena of the persistence hunt, the dip is not a price movement. It is a psychological rupture. It is the moment when the weak-handed component experiences a total failure of their internal law. They have reached the limit of their cortisol endurance. When you see the final vertical drop in an asset's value, you are witnessing the forced liquidation of the unprepared. These are the organisms who bought on margin, who over-leveraged their survival signals, and who are now being harvested by the clearinghouses. You are currently afraid of the red, while the apex predator is busy auditing the carcass. He understands that in the predatory landscape of 2026, the only true alpha is the ability to maintain metabolic stillness while the swarm is being liquidated. The architecture of the vulture strike requires you to monitor the sentiment to physics ratio. Most of you are still thinking in terms of social validation. You want to buy when the news is positive and the swarm is optimistic. This is strategic suicide. By the time the swarm is happy, the asymmetric yield has already been inhaled by the early movers. The vulture predator seeks the maximum information noise. He looks for the coordinate where the news cycle is broadcasting total systemic collapse. This is the capitulation signal. It is the point where the price has decoupled from the functional utility of the asset because of emotional friction. The scavenger is selling because he feels the pain. The sovereign is buying because he calculates the mass. He understands that the blood is the lubrication for the transfer of ownership. He does not predict the bottom. He identifies the exhaustion. He waits for the volume spike that marks the final exit of the fearful, and then he annexes the coordinate with clinical coldness. Consider the biology of dry powder. In the persistence hunt, the predator that survives is the one that has sequestered energy for the final sprint. Most of you are fully invested at the top because you cannot endure the tension of the sidelines. You are suffering from dopamine dependency, needing to be in the action at all times. This makes you strategically light. When the crash arrives, you have zero metabolic reserves to strike. You are a participant in the panic rather than a beneficiary of the reset. The sovereign predator practices metabolic sequestration. He maintains a high liquidity perimeter. He is willing to look unproductive to the unevolved during the bull market so that he can be hyper-productive during the collapse. He understands that cash is a call option on chaos. It is the stored force that allows him to buy the matter while others are selling their souls just to cover their interest payments. He is the sentinel of the reserve. We must analyze the neurochemistry of the contrarian strike. The human brain is a social mirroring machine. It is biologically difficult to buy when the environment is screaming to sell. This is evolutionary safeguarding that has become a sovereign obstacle. To strike at the bottom, you must perform a neural decoupling. You must move your validation from the external swarm to your internal law. The apex predator has achieved hormonal independence. He does not seek agreement, he seeks dominance. He understands that the best deals are always found in the darkest coordinates. He practices sifting the wreckage. He distinguishes between junk, assets that are dying because they are obsolete, and distressed gems, assets that are dying only because their owners are in a panic. He buys the functional substrate at the price of digital dust. He is the clinical auditor of the apocalypse. For those ready to move from the metabolic waste of the panic trap to the high-voltage sovereignty of the hunter, the Protocol 260 provides the clinical architecture for constructing automated digital empires. This is the tactical fulcrum. You utilize the flow generated by your automated yield vents to build your reserves during the quiet periods. This autonomous capital is what provides the hormonal stillness required to ignore the swarm's hysteria. When your survival is decoupled from the market's daily movement, you gain the coldness to wait for the blood strike. You use the machine spent to fund the annexation. By the time the unevolved realized that the crisis was actually a reset of the hierarchy, the sovereign has already sequestered their life force into his own stronghold of force. He has moved from the frequency of the victim to the frequency of the annexer. The entropy of the safety narrative is the final movement of the trap. The giants tell you to wait for the recovery before you invest. This is strategic sabotage. Recovery is just another word for high prices. By the time the safety is visible to the masses, the vulture has already finished his meal and garrisoned the perimeter. In the safety matrix, you are always the exit liquidity for the sovereigns. You buy the top because it feels secure, and you sell the bottom because it feels dangerous. This is biological inversion. The apex predator understands that risk is at its minimum when blood is at its maximum. He builds his perimeter of matter while the environment is fluid and volatile. He has achieved atmospheric sovereignty. He is not reacting to a world he doesn't control. He is garrisoning a world he owns. He has moved from the surface of the panic to the sovereignty of the substrate. Recognition of this biological requirement is the only way out of the mud. You must move from the horizontal plane of the panic trader to the vertical axis of the vulture owner. You must stop saving for a rainy day and start recruiting for a storm. The hunt is not a social experiment. It is a specific target acquisition of the physical and digital core during a state of systemic failure. You must decide what you are. Are you the bleeding prey that is being liquidated by the hierarchy, or the vulture predator who is harvesting the fear of the entire ecosystem? The primal code is not about finance. It is about temporal and emotional dominance. Find the coordinate where the blood is freshest and the panic is loudest, and put all your metabolic weight on it. Stand up, audit your survival leaks, and begin the final annexation of your sovereign kingdom. The abyss is waiting for the attached, but the substrate is waiting for the sovereign. Stop fearing the crash and start calculating the yield. We have reached the terminal coordinate of the predatory annexation, the absolute boundary where the vulture must transform into the sentinel of the substrate. You believe that once you have bought the blood, your work is finished and you can simply wait for the profit to manifest. This is a terminal civilizational hallucination. In the raw, unyielding arena of the persistence hunt, the kill is only the beginning. Once you have acquired a high-density resource at a clinical discount, you are immediately entering the garrison phase. The hierarchy does not like to lose territory. It will immediately attempt to re-inhale your energy through the next cycle of synthetic inflation and social guilt. You are currently celebrating your win, while the environment is preparing to audit your holding power. We are now presecting the final architecture of the sovereign garrison, showing you why the exit strategy of the unevolved is a terminal leak of your force, and how the apex predator utilizes matter sequestration to move from the frequency of the lucky gambler to the frequency of the permanent creditor. You are currently in the green, and the matrix is preparing to test your internal law. The human nervous system is currently being subjected to a strategic sifting of greed. After the crash comes the recovery, which is the matrix's way of triggering your euphoria circuit. When the prices begin to climb, the scavenger's brain receives a signal of abundance, which causes his apex drive to go dormant. He begins to think about liquidating his position to fund a synthetic lifestyle, to buy the luxury car, the status home, or the social validation. This is metabolic treason. You are trading your sovereign matter, the hard assets you fought for during the blood strike, for fluid consumption. You are effectively selling your fortress to buy decorations for your grave. The sovereign man understands that profit-taking is a submission to the inflation predator. He does not sell to the swarm. He recruits the swarm to build upon his substrate. He has moved from the volatility of the trade to the continuity of the dynastic garrison. Consider the biology of territorial fortification. In the wild, after the vulture has finished the meal, the organism must retreat to the high ground to digest and garrison the surplus. Most of you have a soft perimeter. You allow your wins to be visible. You broadcast your yield to the swarm. This triggers the envy audit of the matrix. You invite the tax predator, the social parasite, and the family leech to your den. The apex predator understands strategic sequestration. He hides his mass within complex structures and informational silence. He reaches a point of hormonal stillness where he no longer requires the applause of the scavenger. He values the boredom of the ownership over the theater of the realization. He understands that wealth is not money in a bank. It is control over the energy vents of the future. If you can be be bought out of your position, you never truly owned the coordinate. The architecture of the sovereign garrison requires you to move from linear gains to systemic leverage. While the unevolved are exiting their positions to realize their profits, the sovereign is borrowing against his mass to annex even more territory. He understands that the debt of the sovereign is the shackle of the matrix. By using his high-value substrate as collateral, he remains in a state of permanent ownership while utilizing the fiat flow of the giants to expand his perimeter. He has become a creditor of reality. He does not work for the system. The system pays him rent to exist on his substrate. This is the primal code of the landlord. It is the realization that matter is the only absolute value in an era of synthetic liquidity. For those ready to fuel their physical entrenchment through the mastery of the digital hunt, the Protocol 260 provides the clinical architecture for constructing automated YouTube AI empires that function as your primary status acquisition engines. You use the automated flow to pay the metabolic cost of your garrison, ensuring you never have to sell the stone to pay for your bread. We must observe the neurochemistry of the next bubble. After the blood is cleared, the matrix begins the process of neural grooming for the next collapse. It creates a new synthetic narrative, a new AI coin, a new housing boom, a new digital gold rush. It wants you to take your vulture wins and reinvest them into a high volatility bubble. This is recursive liquidation. The matrix wants to win back the territory you annexed during the crash. The sovereign predator maintains informational sovereignty. He does not follow the flow of the new trend. He stays anchored in the functional substrate. He reaches a point of hormonal independence where the green candle of the new bubble is not a call to action, but a call to fortify. He understands that his patience is his primary apex weapon. He is the stable variable who watches the new scavengers repeat the same errors he exploited in the last cycle. He has achieved phase shift dominance by becoming the one who never leaves the den. Recognition of this biological requirement is the only way out of the mud. You must move from the horizontal plane of the profit taker to the vertical axis of the founder. You must stop exiting and start garrisoning. The hunt is not a one-time event. It is a specific target acquisition of loyalty, utility, and territorial mass that lasts for generations. You must decide what you are. Are you the vulture who ate well once but will starve in the next winter, or the sovereign lord who converted the carcass into a kingdom? The primal code is not about quick cash. It is about functional empires. Find the coordinate where the blood has dried into stone and put all your metabolic weight on it. Stand up, audit your realization leaks, and begin the final sifting of your social kingdom. The abyss is waiting for the liquidators, but the stronghold is waiting for the sovereign. Stop taking profits and start annexing the immortal. Win. We have reached the absolute terminal coordinate of the predatory consolidation, the final boundary where the vulture must transcend the act of the strike and become the systemic architect of the core. You believe that the win is achieved once the assets are secured and the numbers on the screen turn green. This is a terminal civilizational hallucination. In the raw, unyielding arena of the persistence hunt, the acquisition of a distressed asset is merely the sequestration of the raw material. The real work, the work that separates the one-time scavenger from the sovereign dynasty, is the clinical process of systemic hardening. You are currently holding your positions while the environment is preparing to audit your metabolic integrity. We are now presecting the final architecture of the sovereign lordship, showing you why the exit strategy is a slave protocol designed to return your force to the matrix, and how the apex predator utilizes hierarchical mass to move from the frequency of the profit maker to the frequency of the global creditor. You are currently winning, and the matrix is preparing to inhale your complacency. The human nervous system is currently being subjected to a strategic sifting of resilience. After the blood has dried, the matrix initiates the grooming phase. It floods the environment with stability signals and synthetic growth narratives to encourage the organism to relax its perimeter. When the market returns to normal, the unevolved brain receives a signal of abundance, which causes the survival circuit to go dormant. You begin to look at your wealth as a means for comfort rather than a weapon for annexation. This is strategic softening. The corporation parasites want you to take profits, to convert your hard matter, the assets, back into soft currency, the fiat. This is biological liquidation. By exiting your position, you are voluntarily surrendering the high ground you captured during the collapse. The sovereign man understands that sovereignty is the power to never sell. He does not seek the exit. He seeks the total occupation of the coordinate. Consider the biology of asymmetric leverage. In the persistence hunt, the organism that owns the water source does not sell the water, taxes the flow. Most of you are still thinking in terms of capital gains. This is a terminal leak. The sovereign predator thinks in terms of collateralized expansion. He utilizes his high-density substrate, the assets he bought when there was blood, as a permanent battery of force. He borrows against the static mass to fund the kinetic strike on the next coordinate. He remains in a state of infinite ownership, while the matrix provides the liquidity for his further expansion. This is the primal code of the creditor. He has achieved phase shift dominance, where he no longer participates in the market. He governs the market from the frequency of the Lord. He understands that money is the lube of the extraction, and matter is the fortress of the sovereign. The architecture of the sovereign lordship requires you to move from individual predation to systemic dominance. You must sequestrate your gains within the z-axis of complexity. If your assets are visible and liquid, they are auditable by the hierarchy. They can be taxed, squeezed, or liquidated through legal or social friction. The apex predator understands informational opacity. He builds a perimeter of silence. He hides his mass within automated systems, specialized niches, and physical enclaves. For those ready to fuel their physical entrenchment through the mastery of the digital hunt, the Protocol 260 provides the clinical architecture for constructing automated YouTube AI empires that function as your primary yield generators. You use the digital flow to pay the metabolic cost of your physical garrison. This ensures that your hard assets, the land, the stone, the substrate, remain in a state of perfect stillness. You are the ghost who owns the machine. We must observe the neurochemistry of post-strike stillness. After the blood strike, the dopamine scavenger seeks the next rush. He enters new, high-risk positions because he is addicted to the volatility. This is recursive risk. It is the way the matrix wins back the energy it lost during the crash. The sovereign predator practices hormonal independence. He has the coldness to remain unproductive in the eyes of the swarm. He reaches a point of metabolic stillness where he no longer requires the action. He values the boredom of the stronghold over the theater of the trade. He understands that his patience is his primary apex weapon. He watches the new scavengers repeat the same errors of urgency and greed, and he prepares his dry powder for the next inevitable reset. He is the stable variable in a world of vibrating components. The entropy of the realized gain is the final cage. The giants want you to realize your profits so they can realize their extraction. Every time you sell, you pay the metabolic tax to the state and the bank. You are hemorrhaging force to buy temporary status. The apex predator seeks the isolation of the core. He builds a perimeter that acts as a biological filter. He decides what information and what energy is allowed to cross his threshold. He has achieved atmospheric sovereignty. He is the censor of his own environment, and his internal law is the only frequency that matters. He is not investing in a world he doesn't control. He is garrisoning a world he owns. He has moved from the frequency of the gambler to the frequency of the founder. Recognition of this biological requirement is the only way out of the mud. You must move from the horizontal plane of the profit taker to the vertical axis of the owner. You must stop exiting and start recruiting the substrate. The hunt is not a one-time event. It is a specific target acquisition of loyalty, utility, and territorial mass that lasts for generations. You must decide what you are. Are you the vulture who ate well once but will be recycled in the next reset, or the sovereign lord who converted the carcass into an empire? The primal code is not about quick cash. It is about functional empires. Find the coordinate where the blood has dried into stone and put all your metabolic weight on it. Stand up, audit your realization leaks, and begin the final sifting of your social kingdom. The abyss is waiting for the liquidators, but the stronghold is waiting for the sovereign. Stop taking profits and start annexing the immortal. Win. We have reached the terminal coordinate of the sovereign settlement, the final movement where the vulture must shed the skin of the opportunist and assume the mantle of the eternal creditor. You believe that the objective of buying the blood was to achieve a higher number in a digital account. This is a terminal civilizational hallucination. In the raw, unyielding arena of the persistence hunt, the profit is merely the lube for the final transition. The ultimate goal is the total sequestration of reality. You are currently inhabiting a state of transitionary wealth, existing in a space where you have captured the substrate but have not yet hardened the law. This makes you a target for the next phase of the great sifting. We are now presecting the final architecture of the generational lordship, showing you why the liquid life is a slave protocol and how the apex predator utilizes matter inertia to move from the frequency of the winner of the cycle to the frequency of the governor of the reset. You are currently successful and the environment is preparing to audit your biological continuity. The human nervous system is currently being subjected to a strategic extraction of legacy. The Matrix has professionalized the experience of the wealthy to ensure that the unevolved never cross the threshold into dynastic sovereignty. They have sold you the reward of consumption. When you sell your captured assets to enjoy the fruits of your labor, you are performing a metabolic resignation. You are trading your fortress, the hard ground you annexed when others were bleeding, for transient dopamine. This is biological liquidation. You are effectively erasing your lineage's future for a high-status experience in the present. The sovereign man understands that true wealth is the ability to dictate the environment. He does not cash out, he digs in. He reaches a point of hormonal stillness where he no longer seeks the applause of the swarm. He has moved from the frequency of the player to the frequency of the house. Consider the biology of weight. In the persistence hunt, the predator that survives the winter is the one that is heavy, the one that has stored enough energy and secured a den that cannot be breached. Most of you are still light, you are liquid, you are mobile. While mobility is a tool for the strike, it is a vulnerability for the garrison. If your wealth is liquid, it is transparent. It can be inhaled by the hierarchy through digital resets, bank freezes, or algorithmic taxation. The apex predator seeks mass. He wants to own the things that are hard to move and impossible to delete. He wants the boredom of the substrate. He freezes his energy into the stone, the soil, and the primary systems of production. He understands that matter is the memory of force. By securing the core, he creates a gravitational well that forces the environment to orbit around him. He is no longer searching for opportunity. He is the coordinate of opportunity. The architecture of the eternal creditor requires you to move from participating in the economy to issuing the reality. While the unevolved are working for money, the sovereign is issuing debt to the machine. He utilizes his captured mass as the ultimate collateral. He understands that the reset of 2026 is a sifting of the debtors. By owning the primary assets and maintaining zero metabolic dependency on the hierarchy's feed, he becomes the natural lord of his territory. He does not need the matrix to function. The matrix needs his substrate to exist. This is the primal code of the founder. For those ready to fuel their physical entrenchment through the mastery of the digital hunt, the protocol 260 provides the clinical architecture for constructing automated YouTube AI empires that function as your autonomous energy vents. You use the automated flow to pay the metabolic cost of your garrison, ensuring that your primary matter is never for sale. You have achieved economic autonomy by building a machine that serves the man. We must observe the neurochemistry of the 300-year frame. Most of you are still thinking in terms of your own biological timeline. This is strategic myopia. The matrix loves the short-lived sovereign because he is temporary. He will eventually liquidate and return his energy to the swarm. The apex predator thinks in dynastic time. He builds systems of continuity. He creates internal laws and cultural perimeters for his bloodline to ensure that the capture he made during the blood strike remains within the den for 3 centuries. He reaches a point of hormonal independence where his success is measured by the stability of the garrison, not the volatility of the yield. He has moved from the frequency of the hunter to the frequency of the ancestor. He is the stable variable who has already secured the high ground for generations yet to be born. The entropy of the individual success is the final cage. The giants have compressed the masses into ego hives where winning is defined by your personal consumption. This is biological sabotage. It encourages the organism to burn its reserves on experiences that leave zero structural trace. In the ego matrix, you have zero territorial sovereignty. You are a successful refugee. The apex predator seeks the isolation of the stronghold. He builds a perimeter that acts as a biological filter. He and his peers decide what information and what energy is allowed to cross their threshold. They have achieved atmospheric sovereignty. They are the sensors of their own environment, and their internal law is the only frequency that matters. They are not investing in a world they don't control. They are ruling a world they own. Recognition of this biological requirement is the only way out of the mud. You must move from the horizontal plane of the vulture to the vertical axis of the Lord. You must stop buying low and start owning forever. The hunt is not a financial game. It is a specific target acquisition of the substrate that defines the future. You must decide what you are. Are you the vulture who gorged himself during the crash but will be forgotten in the next spring, or the sovereign founder who converted the blood into the foundation of an empire? The primal code is not about wealth. It is about force multiplication through matter. Find the coordinate where you can stand in the informational silence of your own dynasty and put all your metabolic weight on it. Stand up, audit your legacy leaks, and begin the final sifting of your social kingdom. The abyss is waiting for the consumers, but the stronghold is waiting for the sovereign. Stop realizing profits and start manifesting reality. Win.